Congratulations, you have just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and our mission is to help you build and maintain a lean, healthy body that you love for the rest of your life, so you can show up in the second half of your life as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. We have another episode of the Coach's Corner today, so no guest, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our normal interview format. But this week, I start out by rambling for a couple of minutes about my vacation last week, and then I answer a listener question about the best workout program for fat loss, and then I jump right into the politically and emotionally charged subject of how to best prepare ourselves for a potential round 2 of COVID. But before I get to that, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by The Silver Edge. The Silver Edge is my online nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle coaching business, catering to those of you over 50 who aren't ready to give up and buy into the common narrative of it's all downhill from here. At The Silver Edge, we take a health-first approach to working with our clients to help them build lean, strong, vital bodies that last. Look, there's no shortage of lose-weight-quick coaches, products, and programs in the world today, but here's the deal. You can either lose weight quickly or permanently. So if you're tired of losing and gaining the same weight over and over again, if you're tired of constantly dieting, or if you have a poor relationship with food, exercise, and your body, then I invite you to book a call and see if our services are a perfect fit for you and your goals. The easiest way to do this is head over to silveredgefitness.com and click on the coaching tab, or just shoot me an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show. Okay, so I just got back from vacation last week and I had a great time. I haven't taken a vacation in a little while. So this was just a quick vacation. My wife and I, we went down to the Florida Keys. We have some friends that live in Isla Mirada. Shout out to Joy and David. They were fantastic and gracious hosts. They kind of showed us around, took us to all their favorite places, and we've been down there a couple of times in the past. Joy is one of my wife's childhood friends from middle school. They grew up together. They're still great friends. But anyway, had a blast down there. And then we moved up into New Smyrna Beach for the weekend. My wife's cousin got married. So a beautiful wedding ceremony there. Shout out to, Amber. And I think Joel is her husband, maybe. Of course, they're not listening to the show. These are young people, but they had a beautiful wedding ceremony. So a great time. And the reason I bring this up is one of the questions I very frequently get asked, especially by people that are maybe new or renewed into a fitness, health, nutrition journey, is what do I do when I go on vacation? I don't want to undo all that hard work I've done. And I'm going to tell you what I tell those people, and then I'm going to tell you what I did. Basically, what I tell people, if you're going on a vacation, and let's say it's 2 weeks or less, 1 or 2 weeks, it's pretty typical for those of us in the U.S., right, is don't worry about it. A vacation is by definition a break from your normal routine. So what I would encourage those of you that are really excited about being on a fitness or health journey, when you go on vacation, it's not an excuse to go off the rails, but it is a time to take a break. And really what I think you should focus on during this time is connecting with the people you're traveling with. So in my case, I went down to the Keys. It was just my wife and I. Our kids are grown. We have adult children now, but we didn't bring them. So it was just us. And I really spent the time really connecting with my wife, spending some good quality time with her without the distractions of work and the household and all of the normal day-to-day things, right? So that's what I focused on. And that's what I encourage folks when they go on vacation to really focus on. Really take in the place that you're visiting, try and meet and talk to new people, try and absorb some of the culture, and just basically to enjoy the time there. Now, again, like I said, I don't think a vacation is a time to go hog wild. So maybe to have all of the desserts or all of the alcoholic drinks or anything like that. But I do think that it's a time to let go of your normal routine, right? Your work or your workout and maybe even somewhat your nutrition. Now, here's what I did. I took a couple of outfits for working out. So I had two outfits for working out. And my thought was, if I feel like it, I'll hit the gym. Now, I didn't make any of these travel plans. My wife made them all for us. And we got down to this beautiful resort in Isla Morada. Turns out they didn't have a gym. So I don't know many resorts that don't have gyms, but hats off to them. They don't. So I didn't work out. I didn't work out at all. And then where we stayed up in New Smyrna Beach was a gorgeous bed and breakfast. So no gym there. Now look, I could have found a local gym and probably paid a drop-in fee and gotten a workout in, but I didn't. I got lots and lots of steps. And that was pretty much it. I mean, we, with our friends, Joy and David, we took a 4-mile bike ride for breakfast one morning, and then, of course, another 4-mile ride back. So we got steps. We got a little bit of movement. I did a little bit of snorkeling, a tiny bit of fishing. I stayed active, but I didn't get my workouts in. And then on the nutrition side, I ate a ton of fantastic fresh seafood. I love seafood. I love all the seafood, and I just smashed it. And I wasn't counting calories. I didn't track anything in my Fitness Pal. What I did do was try to ensure that I hit my protein target. So for me, I'm trying to hit 200 grams of protein every day. I've done that long enough. I know what that more or less looks like. So I prioritized protein, but everything else went out the window. When everybody was ordering, say, desserts after our meal, I had dessert. I enjoyed, some key lime pie and some other things like that. So that's what I did. Again, my goal for that vacation was to unplug, relax, just to disconnect from the busy, go, everyday life that is kind of the norm around here. And in fact, in terms of work, I had, we did 3 emails that went out to my email list last week and 2 podcasts. Those of you that listened to last week's podcast probably noticed that they were classic rewinds, meaning I just repackaged an old one and republished it last week. So I didn't write those emails while I was on vacation. I didn't obviously record those podcasts. I just queued those up and had those automatically go out, both the emails and the podcast. So I really didn't do a whole lot of work, very little, while I was on vacation last week. Had a fantastic time. And again, big shout out to Joy and David for being gracious hosts for us. Shout out to Amber and Joel for a beautiful wedding. And that's what I did last week. It's good to be back in the saddle and back at it again. Okay, this week's listener question is from Kathy. And Kathy writes, quote, "What type of exercise program do you do during the weight loss phase of the program? How do you keep the muscle that you've built in the strength training phase?" End quote. This is a great question. Thank you, Kathy, for submitting this question. So for those of you that might not be familiar what we're talking about, here at the Silver Edge, we advocate a very specific framework for weight loss that prioritizes what you do before and after your diet as the critical components of long-term weight loss success. In other words, we think that what you do before and after your diet are way more important than your diet. It's not nearly as hard to lose weight as it is to maintain lost weight for the long haul. In fact, statistically speaking, if you lose weight, you have less than a 5% chance of maintaining that weight loss years from now. So we periodize weight loss in the framework that we use with all of our clients. Before they start a diet, we work on restoring and optimizing metabolism, and this includes shoring up healthy habits, starting a strength training program, and basically focusing on getting overall healthy enough to start an effective diet. Then we move into the fat loss phase, aka the diet, and then we transition clients into a reverse diet. And that's basically the framework at a very high level. And depending on how much weight loss someone has to lose, they might need to cycle through that framework or that process multiple times. So the first part of Kathy's question is, what exercise program is best during the actual weight loss phase? And the simple answer is whatever you're not currently doing. In other words, we want to change up the stimulus, but there isn't one specific workout protocol that is necessarily better than another for the fat loss phase. I'm personally a fan of transitioning to lighter weights and higher reps when I'm in a diet phase because basically it messes with my head if I try and do strength work, in other words, lower reps. because I can't lift the same weight when I'm in a diet phase as I can when I'm in a calorie maintenance or calorie surplus state. In other words, when I'm eating plenty of foods, I feel pretty strong and I can lift some heavy weights. But you get me a few weeks, maybe a month or so into a diet phase, I'm just not as strong. I don't have the calories coming in to really power max effort. So that's why I'm a fan of moving more into those lighter weights, higher reps. But the key to remember is that what we're doing is we're switching our emphasis from muscle building, which, keep in mind, that speeds up our metabolism so that we burn more calories even when we're at rest. We're switching from that muscle building to fat burning. So it's still very important to push hard in the gym. You want to send a loud muscle preserving signal to your central nervous system. Just realize that the deeper you get into your diet phase, you're just not going to be as strong as you are in other phases of this framework. Again, I'm a big fan of doing some unique exercises here, something like maybe perfecting your Turkish get-ups, which I think is a fabulous movement that everybody over 50 should work on, or maybe working again in those higher rep ranges. I love programming things like supersets, etc. when I'm in that fat loss phase. So thanks, Kathy, for submitting this question. I hope that answers your question sufficiently. And remember, if you'd like for me to answer your question here on the show, just email me at coach@silveredgefitness.com. Before I get to the rest of the show, I want to do my social media shout out. So for my fitness shout out today, I think keeping with the theme of today, I want to shout out Dr. Heather Moday. Now, those of you that have been around here for a while, your longtime listeners, that name might ring a bell. She was a guest on this show probably a year or so ago. But Dr. Moday is an integrative and functional medicine doctor, and she's the author of the book, The Immunotype Breakthrough, which is more or less what we talked about on the episode we did together. But she's a gut, brain, immune system expert. She does a lot of work in longevity and is a fantastic follow on Instagram. So you guys can follow her at Dr. Heather Moday. That's DrHeatherModay. And of course, I'll throw that into the show notes as well. For my personal shout out today, I want to shout out John Joseph. For those of you that don't know, John Joseph was the lead man for the hardcore band The Cro-Mags, one of my favorite OG hardcore bands of all time. And just side note, The Cro-Mags are definitely featured in my workout playlist to this day. Now, just fair warning, this account definitely has tons of triggering content here, and it's not for the faint of heart. But it does kind of go with our theme today, and this guy has been true to his hardcore roots his entire life. He says some very outrageous things and he makes some very wild claims, but this guy is genuinely and entirely unapologetically himself. And he's a pretty fit, healthy dude as well. Anyway, if that sounds at all interesting to you, you can check him out on Instagram. He's over there at John Joseph Discipline. That's JosephDiscipline. And again, I'll throw both of those into the show notes. You guys can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/223. Your COVID Round 2 Survival Guide. Okay, folks, I realize that I may be walking across a landmine-laden field by addressing this topic, but COVID is very much back in the news this week with talks of potential new vaccines, potential mask mandates, and even lockdowns. And I guess I'm not too worried because I'm probably not big enough to actually cancel or to deplatform, at least not yet. But it seems to me that health and wellness are being politicized and even weaponized recently to be used against us. I mean, if you just Google fitness and far right and see some of the garbage that pops up, it's a little bit scary what's going on in our world today. Now, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but there is, in fact, a very scary financial and political reality that you and I are worth more chronically sick than we are as healthy, vital individuals. But here's the deal. I don't want to make this a political episode. Instead, I want to talk about what we can all do to ensure that we are strong, healthy, and have optimized immune systems to give us the best chance at combating whatever illnesses come our way, COVID or otherwise. So let's put together a COVID round 2 survival guide. Whether you are a vaccine lover or hater or anywhere in between, these are the top healthy habits that you should consider embracing right now to optimize your immune system and give yourself the best chances of getting through this next pandemic season unscathed. Number 1 is sleep. Yeah, I get it. I know I sound like a broken record, but sleep really is a miracle drug. And I've said it before and I'll say it here again. I believe that sleep is the foundation to over 50 health and wellness. Now, if you're not currently getting the gold standard of 8 hours of beautiful, restful sleep every night, here's a few of my favorite tips. Number 1, regular bed and wake times. This means going to bed at the same time every night and getting up at roughly the same time every morning. Now, most of us do a pretty good job of this on the weekdays, but then we have a completely different bed and wake schedule on weekends. As much as is practical, try and bring those into a regular, consistent routine. Number 2, keep your room dark and cool. So I like a dark room, blackout curtains. If you have anything that's got little electronic lights, put a little piece of tape over that, really make it dark. And when I say a cool room, I'm talking about sub 70 degrees. There was a study that showed the optimal temperature for humans for sleeping, I think it was 68 degrees, maybe 67 degrees. It's colder than you probably think. Number 3, and this is a tough one, but no screens an hour before bed. And there's a couple reasons for this. Number 1, you probably know there's your electronic screens emit blue light, and that inhibits the production of melatonin, which helps you fall asleep. And the other reason is what we're looking at on these electronic screens right before bed typically is stimulating or even worse, triggering. So if you're watching a murder mystery or a true crime show right before bed, maybe not the most conducive for sleep, or even worse yet, if you're scrolling through your social media, or even worse yet, you're scrolling the news right before bed, again, not real conducive for healthy sleep. And my last tip is one that might not be so obvious, and that's to get some morning sunlight exposure. So what we're doing when we get morning sunlight exposure is we're just setting up our day for a successful night of sleep. That's right. A successful night of sleep starts in the morning. And the idea here is that we have this circadian rhythm, right? When the sun comes up, we become awake. We want our cortisol to be rising and our melatonin to be falling. There's an inverse relationship between those two things. And similarly, in the evening, we want the cortisol to be falling off and we want the melatonin to be on the rise. And one of the best ways to really cement in that relationship between those two is to expose yourself to some morning sunlight. I'm personally a big fan of getting out and taking a walk in the morning, but if that's not practical for you for weather or other reasons, even just sitting in a sunny window in the morning can have some positive health effects. Our number 2 tip for getting through this next pandemic season in a healthy manner is to detox your environment. In our modern lives, we are constantly surrounded by harmful chemicals. We're basically swimming in a sea of toxic chemicals at this point, and they're literally everywhere. Now, you'll see some experts, especially on social media with PhDs after their names, that are poo-pooing this, right? And their main claim is that, look, the poison is in the dose and the amount of toxins in these products that we use is so small that it's inconsequential. But here's the deal. While it is true that these are in fact microdoses of these toxins or poisons, we're constantly exposed to so many, and there's no way for us to account for the harmful dangers caused by the combination of thousands of these chemicals interacting with one another. And add to the fact that we are often exposed to these harmful toxic chemicals on a daily basis. So I've got a couple of tips here for you when it comes to detoxing your environment. And my first tip is this: don't drive yourself nuts. It is really easy to go down a rabbit hole. I've been there. I've done that. About 5 years ago, I nearly drove myself insane trying to detox everything. So just take plastic, for example. let's just say we all know that plastic, even the BPA-free plastic, that doesn't mean it's healthy. It just means the worst offender has been taken out of it, but the second, third, fourth, and fifth worst offenders have not, right? Just let's take that for an example. If I were to say, okay, plastic's bad, I'm going to get rid of all the plastic in my life, what would that look like? You can't. long story short is you just can't. So we can't avoid all toxins and all harmful things, but we can take some steps to reduce our exposure. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest picking a room in your house, and I'm a big fan of starting with your bathroom, and start there by cleaning things out. So there is, if you're not aware, there's a website called EWG.org. That's EWG, like Environmental Working Group.org. They have a great app. And what they do is they rate consumer products, and it's a basic green light, yellow light, red light. And what I'd like for you to do is go into your bathroom and take all of your hygiene and beauty products out and just enter them into the EWG.org app. And what you'll see is some of those products will be, hopefully some of them are in the green, some of them are in the yellow, but I bet a lot of them are in the red, meaning they've got toxins that you should start to consider replacing with healthier alternatives. So I suggest the bathroom because, guys, what are we using? We're using soap, shaving cream, maybe shampoo, underarm deodorant, maybe some perfume, things like that, or cologne, I guess, for us guys. Start with that. Take a look. Ladies, you got a lot more products to go through, right? You got all your different makeups. You probably have conditioners, and you've got a bunch of stuff. So start there. Other places are, your laundry room. Take a look at your detergent. Are you using dryer sheets? Try looking at those things in EWG. You might be horrified what you find there. Then maybe move into your kitchen. We talked about plastic, but there's Teflon and things like that. So maybe I start getting rid of my plastic Tupperware, replace it with glass. Maybe I get rid of that Teflon and nonstick things for things like ceramic and cast iron. Cast iron's a little tricky to use. You got to get it seasoned just right. Ceramic is hideously expensive, but very, very effective when it comes to that. But again, don't drive yourself nuts, but start looking for ways that you can reduce your exposure to environmental toxins. Again, they're everywhere. What we're looking for here isn't perfection, it's progress. All right, number 3 on my list of ways that we can stay healthy through the next pandemic is to eat real food. One of the biggest villains responsible for our declining health, in spite of our astronomical healthcare spending, is our modern food industry. Look at it this way. 90% of the food on our supermarket shelves did not exist 100 years ago. It's not food, but it's actually a food-like substance, and it's making us sick, full stop. So here's a couple tips. My first tip here is to work towards replacing as many processed foods with real foods as is practical. Stats show us that here in the U.S., the average diet is made up of over 70% processed foods. That's the average diet. So that means there's a lot of people out there that their diet is made up of more than 70% processed foods. That's no way, no how healthy, period. My second tip here is you've probably heard the advice of shopping the perimeter of your grocery store, and this is great advice. For the most part, you don't need the garbage that is stocked on the aisles and displayed on the end caps. The good stuff, produce, meat, and dairy, are usually located around the perimeter of the store. And let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room here. Eating in this way takes more time. It just does. There's no sugarcoating that. One of the reasons that processed and ultra-processed foods are so popular is because, 1, they're scientifically engineered to be delicious, but 2, they're also convenient. Let's face it. But I would recommend that you lean into food prep, that you make friends with real whole foods. It doesn't take that much extra time. Carve out the time that it takes to prepare real, nutritious, healthy food. And my last tip here is to prioritize healthy protein in your diet. So you've probably heard me say this before, but we should be aiming for 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And specific to those of us over 50, ladies, you should be aiming for a minimum of 30 grams of protein per meal. Guys, you should shoot for a minimum of 40 grams protein per meal. Now, there's a specific reason for this that has to do with amino acids, mainly leucine, and sensing properties of muscle as we age, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole here. Just suffice it to say that prioritizing healthy protein is the best way to lose fat, build and tone muscle, and have a healthy body composition. My number 4 pandemic survival tip is get strong. As Mark Ripito is fond of saying, strong people are harder to kill. And this means that strong people are less likely to succumb to things like fatal falls or diseases. And when I say to get strong, I mean to lift weights. And yes, I'm talking to you ladies out there. Now, I'm not talking about anything crazy here. You don't need to live in the gym and try and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but 3 times a week of a well thought out, age-appropriate strength training program will do the trick perfectly. When we have more muscle, specifically type 2 muscle that we only get from strength training, it's a great way to optimize our hormones and to stoke our metabolism. And remember, anytime we increase our metabolism, that means we're going to burn more calories while at rest. My number 5 tip, walk every day. I'll say this definitively right now. Walking is one of the most underrated forms of exercise, and most of us, myself included, should do more of it. Now, walking outdoors is the ideal, but if weather or other circumstances make that unpractical, hop on a treadmill or a bike or an elliptical or a Stairmaster. But develop a healthy habit of steady state movement every single day. Now, you've probably heard that the gold standard is 10,000 steps a day, and that's fantastic if you can hit that. But I'd really like to see you work your way up to a minimum of 7,000 daily steps. Okay, so my 6th and final tip for surviving the potential pandemic that's coming here this fall is this. It's manage stress. Okay, this is a big one. Let's face it. We're talking about these healthy habits in the context of a potential round 2 of COVID. And regardless of your personal feeling, there are stressful and divisive times ahead for all of us. Some of us have very strong feelings about vaccines, mask mandates, curfews, personal freedom, and lockdowns. But regardless of your personal philosophies, you can be sure that politicians and media, especially media, will be exploiting our beliefs and feelings for their gain, which means more stress and anxiousness for all of us. So here are a few of my top stress management tips specific for these upcoming times. First things first, stop watching the news. Yeah, I said it. Stop watching the news. If you're someone who's plugged into the 24-hour news cycle, consider detoxing. If you absolutely can't stand breaking up with your news/entertainment media outlet, at least consider limiting your exposure to these addictive but toxic channels, and consider limiting yourself to less than 30 minutes of exposure a day. My second tip here, kind of keeping in that same theme, is to clean up your social media feed, or better yet, take a social media break. Look, we all know we're going to get triggered when that crazy family member starts ranting and raving either for or against upcoming potential mask mandates. Don't allow yourself to get sucked into that. Unfollow triggering people or accounts. It's your social media account. Make sure it serves your mental health and emotional well-being. My third tip is this. Consider starting a prayer, meditation, or journaling practice. Or if you already have one of those practices, really lean into it. You don't need to sit cross-legged on a bare stone floor for hours on end to reach total enlightenment. I'm just talking about starting each day with quiet reflection and giving thanks for all the good and beautiful things in your life. Okay, so those are my top tips for surviving a potential round 2 of COVID, but I wanted to finish with this. We're all in this together. I don't know if there's going to be another round of COVID or not, and if there is, how bad it might be and what sort of measure governments might or might not put into place. But I do know this. Stressful and divisive times tend to bring out the worst in us. But it doesn't have to be that way. People can have different opinions than you, even radically different opinions, and still be good, beautiful people. Practice tolerance, practice love, and by that I mean self-love and the love of others. Remember that you share much more in common with your fellow humans than you do differences. We all want the same things in the end. We want to be safe. We want to feel loved. We want to feel understood. And we want to be healthy. So there you go. That's what I have for you today. Let's get healthy and let's stay strong. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. I'll put the links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/223. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. One is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to consider giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today. And until next time, stay strong.